Доброго дня, шановні гості, спікери, шановні гості, які перебувають у прес-залі, та глядачі, які дивляться нас онлайн. Оголошую про початок заходу, презентації проєкту «Право на сім'ю. Підтримка реформ системи захисту дитини в Україні». Передаю слово спікерам.
Добрий день, шановні колеги. Раді вас вітати на презентації надзвичайно важливого проєкту «Право на сім'ю». Цей проект реалізується благодійною організацією «СОС Дитячі містечка України» за підтримки Федерального міністерства економічного і соціального розвитку Німеччини. У нас є багато спікерів, і тому можу зразу всіх попередити, що я буду модераторкою цього заходу. Мене звати Мар'яна Онуфрик, я національна координаторка проєкту «Право на сім'ю». І прошу всіх спікерів заздалегідь вкладатися в таймінг. Насамперед, рада вітати пані міністерку соціальної політики України Марину Лазебну, яка сьогодні нас привітає онлайн. Дякую, пані Марино, що зачекали.
Is with us today and who will make an introduction to our event.
Встановлюємо зв'язок з пані Мариною.
We are now installing connection. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? We can hear you. Thank you.
Тоді я розпочинаю.
Well, then I will start. Dear colleagues, dear guests, I'm happy to welcome you at this round table, the right to have a family, and support to the bringing up of children in their families. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to the government of Germany who provided aid for this project and allowed us to join that 5 countries who are participants of that project. I also welcome the Ukrainian participants who will implement the project in 6 local communities in the regions of Ukraine. This project fully complies with the priorities of the government of Ukraine and the Ministry of Social Policy, that is to preserve families for children via creation of favorable conditions for families in local communities. We have a number of aids which are provided to 200,000 families with children, and is also very important to provide medical, social, educational services to families with children in local communities. To help a kid in hard circumstances, quite often it is only some minor help needed, either to provide jobs for their parents or to provide proper medical assistance to a child with a disability, or to provide some educational services or minor social support, but that considerably decreases the level of social orphanage for some kids. Social prevention and work with families during the last 2 years had witnessed irrevocable changes. First of all, many local communities recognized the responsibility in protection of local families. We had increased the number of social workers who target the work with children in local communities, and we have increased these positions considerably by almost 30%. And also we have collected and registered full list of information about deliverers of social protection services services for children, and we can say that almost 2 million of citizens were covered with this support. More than 4,000 of families with children in vulnerable conditions. And local communities gradually learn how to work with these families, how to create special projects, how to apply for targeted state assistance, etc. As a ministry, we continuously try to provide support to local communities in this area. Quite recently, we approved 28 standards for delivery of social services, and during the year we are prepared to introduce 6 more standards. Quite recently, yesterday, we had introduced to pass the state standard.
Громадськість, експерти, ми над цим працювали, і нарешті цей стандарт також є. А наступне, з цього року відбувається впровадження комплексної послуги раннього
Inclusive education sector.
Сама сьогодні їжджу по громадах і думаю, і вивчаю, як краще допомогти налагодити
around local communities in Ukraine quite often, and each time I understand that social assistance to vulnerable groups of children, to disabled children, allows us to prevent a lot of grave consequences. This year we had introduced a new type of social aid to families in hard circumstances. These are low interest governmental loans and credits to parents with disabled children, with vulnerable children who would like to open their own businesses. In the year 2021 and this year, we would encourage local communities to use more broadly state subventions to procure special residential property to vulnerable children. We have considerably enlarged the amount of funding provided by the state to social aid, but actually closer to your project. All that I mentioned proves that your project is rather topical and very important. Just a moment, please.
Шановні друзі, я зараз говорила про проєкт розвиток соціальних послуг, де в 10 разів збільшено бюджетне фінансування.
Recently, I mentioned the project about increased social services. We have increased state funding, and now we are thinking about the tools and mechanisms how to implement that better. We would like to increase the procurement of services from non-budgetary sector, to increase the state procurement, which goes to the municipal service deliverers. And I encourage you to have a look at these novelties in our work and to include it into your project. And now, closer to your project, we had looked through the profiles of the regions in which you would like to work, and I would like to draw attention to the rights of children in those regions, and to look look at the families and statistics about families, I believe that although this might be commented and analyzed differently, but at the same time this could be a marker. The number of children which remain in all sorts of
саме в цих областях менше, ніж середній по Україні.
houses in those families are much fewer in number. That is, they are not as numerous as in other regions of Ukraine. For example, and some regions like Kyiv region does not develop the patronage system for children. Of course, I understand that you have perhaps your own priorities and explanations for that fact, but nevertheless, I would like to encourage you to look closer on that. To sum up what I have said, that we are very keen to improve our work with vulnerable children, with children in hard life circumstances, and we are ready to support you.
Працювати спільно з громадським сектором, міжнародними партнерами над розвитком якісних соціальних послуг,
raise the awareness of these problems, that they would be ready to improve the life of families with foster children, and I personally is ready to participate in your roundtables and visits to the regions. I would like to wish you inspiration and encouragement during your work.
Ми дійсно відчуваємо і за співкоординацію наших зусиль, і ті завдання, які ви окреслили, звісно, усвідомлюємо. Я хочу сказати, що саме ці три регіони якраз виділені не випадково, саме через те, що там станом на сьогодні дуже багато implementation. Ми розуміємо і про Київський регіон, ми знаємо проблематику Запорізької області, де одна з найвищих часток дітей, які так в закладах інституційного догляду. Луганська область,
Zaporizhia Oblast, where we have big number of children who remained in different institutions. Luhansk regions where these problems have been persistent for a long period of time. And here we agree with you.
Який є другим секретарем віце-консулом посольства Німеччини в Україні. Дуже багато сприяє і багато вкладає ресурсів саме у сферу розвитку соціальних послуг і сферу захисту прав дитини уже впродовж багатьох років. Я би хотіла, можливо,
Я хочу попросити пане Бьома розказати, які пріоритети, ваші пріоритети в підтримці цього проєкту і в розвитку підтримки дітей. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to be today with you. I've been learning Ukrainian, but my Ukrainian is not sufficient, unfortunately, for communication yet. And today I will start today with the presentation in English. Next time, perhaps, I will. Пані міністра, всі мої колеги, які сьогодні зі мною, вони надзвичайно радіють цьому круглому столу. Я хочу подякувати всім, хто долучився до організації цього заходу. Я дуже рада, що інституціалізувалася та ініціативу, яку ми минулого року розпочали. Це початок трирічної програми, яку ми впроваджуємо в Україні, в Білорусі, в Арменії і в Азербайджані, в Албанії. Німеччина є дуже тісним партнером України. Минулого року наші міністерства виділило більше 100 мільйонів тільки в Україні за останні 2 роки. Ми 90 мільйонів євро витратили на різні проекти підтримки. Наскільки я розумію, що величезна проблема з дотриманням прав дітей в закладах є однією з великих проблем на контрольованій території України. Сотні тисяч дітей перебувають в різних закладах. І хоча нещодавно ці цифри почали знижуватися в Україні, все одно залишається величезна кількість таких дітей. І багато з цих дітей мають батьків, але причина їх присутності в цих закладах – це бідність їх батьків. І дослідження показують, що діти, особливо маленькі, які перебувають в таких закладах, вони страждають від недоїдання, від емоційної неповноцінності. Такі діти часто залишаються потім в різноманітних закладах для сиріт тощо. Це не просто проблема правами людини, це проблема економічна. Це в цих закладах треба утримувати десятки і сотні тисяч людей персоналу замість того, щоб діти зростали в сім'ї, в сімейному середовищі. І Україна зобов'язалася закрити багато таких закладів до 26-го року. З моменту Євромайдану Україна зробила величезні кроки із вдосконалення ситуації з правами людини. Але, на жаль, все одно до 24-го року багато подібних закладів продовжують приймати дітей до 3 років. І багато таких завдань переходить на місцевий рівень в результаті реформи децентралізації. Багато з громад місцевих ще не готові прийняти цю відповідальність. Я рада, що минулого тижня Україна прийняла спеціальний документ щодо соціального захисту і виховання дітей в родинах на місцевому рівні. Ми сподіваємося, що навчання, консультування, допомога соціальних послуг дозволить сім'ям утримувати дітей в родинах, щоб не віддавати їх в соціальні заклади, щоб батьки розуміли, що соціальні заклади – це не в інтересах дітей. І український уряд демонструє свою готовність вирішувати цю проблему з інституціональним розміщенням дітей. Це проблема не соціальної політики, це проблема прав людини. І сподіваюся, що проєкт, спільний проєкт українського уряду наш і організації «Дитяче містечко» дозволить це зробити. Thank you very much that you emphasized the of this reform of deinstitutionalization. That was the first
включає в себе і деінституціалізацію, і розвиток послуг, і захист
but
дитини,
later
дуже
on
багато
we
різноманітних
added
аспектів.
many other aspects like
на жаль, в Україні зараз
social development
не
of
найкращі
children,
часи для
protection
цієї
of
реформи,
children,
не найкращі
etc.
часи для захисту прав дитини в
Unfortunately,
Україні.
Ukraine
Але саме завдяки
experiences
таким проектам ми сподіваємося зрушити і
the,
знову розвернути
not the most
цей корабель
favorable
у правильне
moment for the
русло.
implementation of this
Зараз я
reform,
хочу
but
передати
nevertheless
слово
we should
представниці
contribute
донора, пані Свені Рудольф. Вона
for
буде
the
з нами
better.
на
Now I would like to give
онлайн-зв'язку.
the
Я ще раз
Свені
нагадую, що
Рудольф,
донором цього проекту є Федеральне міністерство
institutional
економічного
partners and
співробітництва та розвитку
programs.
Німеччини. Please, Svenya, the floor is yours. Hello.
Thank you very much. Hi, can you hear me? I hope. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Great.
Чуєте мене, так?
Thank you. Dear representatives, dear guests, dear colleagues,
Шановні представники преси, шановні гості, шановні колеги.
I'm very sorry. Unfortunately, I don't speak Ukrainian, but I will just.
Перепрошую, що не говорю.
Everything is okay, please speak.
Yeah, because I can hear.
No,
Okay.
everything's okay.
Great. So, unfortunately, I don't speak Ukrainian, so I would just direct a few words in English to you. I hope that's fine. Also from my side, welcome to the first roundtable in the framework of our international project addressing a rights-based child protection system in Ukraine. On behalf of Essos Children's Villages Hermann Gemeiner Foundation Germany, for me, it's a great pleasure to be here, at least virtually, let's say, at the kickoff event of this very impressive project. Essos Ukraine and Essos Children's Villages Hermann Gemeiner Foundation Germany can look back on a long-standing, trusting and well-established partnership, which is characterized by our shared objective of supporting children and their families. So now we are very happy to extend this partnership with our new project that is funded by the German Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development. Together with the countries Albania, Armenia, Belarus, and North Macedonia, we will support the process of deinstitutionalization reforms for children. So what does deinstitutionalization mean and why is it so important? Deinstitutionalization is at the very core of developing modern and effective care services for children and families worldwide. So essentially, the term describes the process of moving away from a care system based on large residential institutions, let's say, while at the same time developing other forms of alternative care. These can be small-scale care options provided in small residential settings, such as group homes, or another approach could be family-based care that can take form of kinship care, guardianship care, or other family-based services. And of course, we have the community-based care as a term that combines both family-based and small-scale residential forms of care, and that are located directly within and integrated within the communities. So what is important is that deinstitutionalization is not just the closing down of large institutions. It is really a collection of activities on different levels. So we have prevention so that out-of-home care does not become necessary in the first step. We have the creation of alternative forms of care in the community, for example, foster care. And we have reintegration of institutionalized children and youth into their families of origin. So maybe let me just briefly explain why deinstitutionalization is such an important topic in the whole world. So it is the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child that actually recognizes life in a family as a human right. States and their governments are called upon to create the necessary conditions for every child to exercise this right to grow up in a family. In practice, respect for the right to a family means that the state must provide those especially vulnerable children with appropriate solutions that take into account the children's needs, circumstances, and best interests. Large-scale institutional solutions, such as orphanages, for example, do not offer such possibilities. The harm and threats that institutionalization inflicts on children's well-being and development, including lifelong social exclusion and segregation, for example, has been extensively documented over the past years. Scientific research on children's early development shows that even a relatively short institutional placement can have a negative impact on brain development and negative consequences for emotional well-being and behavior. Institutional care often does not allow for positive individual attachment to caregivers that are necessary for children's successful emotional, physical, mental, and social development. There's consensus over the fact that youth living in residential placements report a higher proportion of behavioral disorders as compared to, for example, kinship care or foster care. No institutions can offer the necessary and stable relations to adult caregivers. No institution has the capacity to offer individualized development possibilities, and no institution can actually replace a family. For these reasons, the international community considers the institutionalization of children without parental care as a violation of human rights. So while we can show that institutionalization is a poor form of care from a qualitative perspective, at the same time, it is also high costly when compared for community-based prevention, family support systems, and substitute families. Services to assist families in times of crisis and, for example, to place children in adoptive families usually only require very short-term financial input. So these findings, in combination with the request of the UN Child Rights Convention, show the importance of encouraging high-quality alternative care options in family environments and of community-based services for families in need. So therefore, this is exactly what the task of our project will be. At the end of the project, we would like to have developed high-quality support services so that children who do not have or are at the risk of losing parental care and their families have access to support, such as, for example, preventive evidence-based parental skills training to reduce the risk of family breakups, alternative care programs like small family-like care options, foster parents who are actually skilled to raise children with special needs, and aftercare support to young people who are leaving an institution. Last but not least, we also hope to see vulnerable children being included in a legislative framework that aims at providing them with the hope of a better life, but out of institutions. Therefore, we would like to work with you on the laws and regulation, offer training and services, and together create the best possible care for these children. At this point, I cannot thank enough all the representative partners who are here today to demonstrate your strong political will to reform the child protection and care system, to ensure the protection of children's rights to family life, and to work towards ending the institutionalization of children. I am very confident that together we can all ensure a successful development of this project and help to put the welfare of the most vulnerable within our societies first. So thank you very much for your attention, and I wish us all a very successful start of this project. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Svenja, for your participation and making a good stress upon the importance of the institutionalization. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you to all the speakers. These were introductory words and welcoming words for the project. And now I would like to provide broader description what about
Отже, проект «Право на сім'ю», підтримка реформи системи захисту дитини,
the right to have a family, supporting the reform of the child's protection in Ukraine. This is carried out by the Federal Ministry of
Тривалість проекту, загалом наш проект є дуже унікальним. Він, зокрема, те, що він буде тривати понад 40 місяців і завершується наприкінці квітня 2025 року, що, зокрема, забезпечить сталість цього проекту. Так, ви знаєте, що дуже часто реалізуються міжнародні проекти, які тривають рік, максимум півтори. І, на жаль, часто буває так, що після того, як проект завершить свою діяльність, відбувається певна зміна в гіршу сторону, на жаль, в громаді порівняно з тим, що було під час проекту. І саме тому цей проект є дуже важливий з точки зору того, що ми маємо можливість не лише розвинути нові послуги, але й прослідкувати і надати технічну підтримку громадам для того, щоб забезпечити сталість цих послуг. Мета проекту – покращити забезпечення прав дитини з особливим фокусом на підтримці реформи системи альтернативного догляду дітей та процесах деінституціалізації. Географія проекту є так само унікальною для України. Як уже сьогодні наголошувалось не один раз, він реалізується паралельно в 5 країнах. Це Албанія, Білорусь, Вірменія, Північна Македонія та, власне, Україна. І в кожній з цих країн проєкт впроваджується національним відділенням СОС «Дитячі містечка» у цій країні. Пізніше Сергій Лукашов, національний директор, розповість більше про СОС «Дитячі містечка», і ви зрозумієте, чому саме так це відбувається, оскільки СОС «Дитячі містечка» трошки таку інтригу працює у 137 країнах світу і територіях. В Україні цей проект реалізується в 3 регіонах, і я дуже вдячна пані міністерці, що вона підкреслила важливість участі саме в цих регіонах. Так, ми не випадково саме їх обрали, це виклик для нас, це професійний виклик, але ми вирішили зосередитися саме на цих регіонах, де є станом на сьогодні найбільше труднощів і з процесом впровадження соціальних послуг, і реформи деінституціалізації. Київська область – це Узинська і Фастівська громади, Луганська, Кремінська і Шульгинська громади, Запорізька, Токмацька і Оріхівська громади. І ще трошки про географію. Він реалізується на 3 рівнях. Вибачте, національний, обласний та на рівні громад. Ми ставимо перед собою такі 4 цілі. Перша – це законодавче і політичне, розробити рекомендації, що стануть основою для змін до законодавства у сфері захисту дитини та підтримки сімей. Це, власне,
to draft new pieces of legislation which will lay the foundation for changes in child's protection and family support. Here, we would like to review the provisions about foster parents, about carers, foster families, and other sorts of aid provided to children, and to reflect in our legislation the fundamental standards of the United Nations and UN Convention about foster families. Despite the fact that this convention is working for a long period of time, Ukraine has not implemented it sufficiently well. The second objective is to ensure development of proper services at the level of local communities, and to do this properly, these services should be delegated to non-state organizations and companies. Also, we plan a broad public awareness campaign, both local communities and at the level of the regions. To do that, we plan to have meetings with politicians, local politicians, who have to do more at the regional level. That this will gain broader support to the reform implementation. Objective number is to increase the professional level of those who provide services to children and to families. Today, we have registered participants of the training, which will start tomorrow. They had arrived to the training center, and we will teach them the international experience, the best practices, which they will be able to apply later. And objective number 4 is to ensure access to high quality and innovative services at the level of local communities. We will create local centers which will offer consultancy services to the foster families or to vulnerable families at the level of local communities to prevent taking of children to big care institutions. Actually, that's it. Later on, answer your questions. And now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Naira Avatisyan. Ms. Avatisyan represents the International Council of the Protection of Human Rights from UNICEF. And Ms. Naira will present the international expertise and powerful impetus on behalf of the UN organizations provided to our project. Naira, thank you so much for participation, and I'm happy that you understand my Ukrainian. I hope you understand it. As for you, you may speak any language you prefer. We will try to translate your words. Today, we explained why deinstitutionalization is important, why big social institutions are not the best option for children. Could you describe more about this problem? Good morning, Mariana. I'm checking whether we have translation. Whether we have translation. If we have translation, then I will speak in English.
Перевод синхронный, но если вы будете сейчас говорить на английском, вам придется отключить себе звук, потому что вам этот же перевод будет возвращаться назад.
This was explanation about translation. Then I will speak Russian. First of all, I would like to congratulate you with the kickoff of the project. I would like also to express my congratulations to Ukrainian government who decided to implement this project. And also I would like to thank you to the German government who have been supporting this project. Quite recently, our organization, the government of Ukraine, the projects in this area, the area of destitutionalization, and this is an important initiative. Thank you for supporting it. Why this initiative is important for Ukraine? UNICEF in the European region believes that deinstitutionalization should become one of the major projects for the regional level. Because perhaps due to the previous Soviet period of history, has a lot of children in the big institutions, children's institutions, and in many countries this is a huge problem. In the Eastern European countries, in post-Soviet countries, quite often we observe that the big institutions are being closed, but children go to the smaller institutions, which do not resolve the problem, actually. 2 years ago, the Children's Rights Committee held hearings about alternative types of care for children. That hearings had demonstrated that prevention is more efficient in prevention of getting children trapped in institutions. This is much easier than all the efforts to bring children back to their native families. That's why development of prevention, provision of support and assistance to families with children is important. Prevention and gatekeeping are becoming more and more important. In order to ensure these two things, we have to offer a wide range of qualified personnel. Quite often, children go to institutions not due to poverty. Of course, this is the reason number one. The second big reason is all sorts of disabilities among children, like retarded development, etc. We are experiencing some difficulties. That's in this context, the subsidies or support provided by this allowed the families to take care about disabled children. The second thing which we lack in Ukraine, which we would like to see in Ukraine, is better level of services at the local level. Quite often, this is a stereotype. If there are no sufficient services at the local level, then for disabled child, it is better to go to the institution. But that's not true. For small children, especially for small children, the situation in the institution is unfavorable for emotional development. Protective family environment is extremely important for small children, and if native family is unable to provide such care, then children should go to foster families. Multiple forms as patronage, as foster families, they are not sufficient. And our task is to offer as many foster families as possible, to provide as many alternatives to the institutions as possible. Only in this way we will be able to eliminate these big care institutions. It is not so easy to transfer the resources which go to big care institutions to the foster families. The principle, the money follows the child, could not be easily implemented. We have to invent how to do this better. The money which are allocated to big institutions, they do not go to the local communities which are responsible for creating full favorable conditions for foster families. I understand how difficult it is to convince the Ministry of Finance, and we have to do our evidence-based advocacy about standards, etc., proving the cost of the service at the level of local community and at the national level or at the level of big care institutions. We have to make all that calculations and to show that it is more efficient to support local communities and service delivery of the local community. Without this financial component, you would not be able to prove that reallocation of resources is profitable for children, is in the benefit of children. We do not wish to close all the care institutions. This is not our objective. And our objective is to create better conditions for children. When we hear that the staff of big care institutions is imperfect, it can be blamed in many violations, etc., we should not forget that many of those people are good people, they are good specialists, and they all have standards, etc. And what we can do, we can transform that big care institutions into something better. We can find how the buildings might be modernized, how to change them for better service. This is the third aspect, how the problem might be tackled. And also we have to work with parents, with service providers. Unfortunately, the healthcare system as a whole promotes, so to say, that institutionalization of children. Quite often, medical staff who see the babies with all sorts of disabilities, they advise the parents to give these children to the care institutions because they understand that at the local level, those families, those parents would not be able to ensure good conditions for children, for disabled children. We have to organize a good awareness campaign for Ukraine, which would fully change the attitude of Ukrainians to the care institutions for children and allow them to understand that these are not best places for children. Thank you, Naira. As you rightly mentioned, this is one of the aims of our project, to show that the care institution could not substitute caring family for a child. Thank you, Naira, once again. And we all know about alternative types of care, and now I would like to give the floor not to Ms. Daria Gerasimchuk, which is the next speaker in our agenda, but to my another colleague who will comment on behalf of the Children's Ombudsman Office in Ukraine. We follow very closely the Children's Ombudsman work in Ukraine. We know how much you do in the contacts with foster parents, with work with care institutions. we have witnessed sharp decrease in the volunteers who want to be foster families for children in many regions. Thank you. You are right. The statistics look rather strange, and these figures suggest that more than 63,000 of children are involved in the foster families care, which is a bit more than 43% of children. And nevertheless, all those figures, they point out to children, to rehabilitation of disabled children. And each one of these children, they require caring family. And as the Children's Ombudsman Office, we believe that our task is to establish good contacts between the participants of this process, that is, between those foster families or care families who are eager to take care about children. And we had established such direct communication between the foster families and care mini houses to allow them to communicate directly with each other. All of them are in different life situations, and many such care families have between 5 and 10 foster children, and many of them have issues with stipends for children, about conditions on which the children could be given to foster parents, about pensions, about social payments to the foster parents and carers, about financial situation or support to those foster children who come to age, who are 18 years old, who become 18 years old. How those children should apply for subvention, how and get support, financial support from local communities. And about avoiding of social subsidies, and when the subsidy is given, but the family buys a car, then the subsidy is deprived from such a family. That is, all those foster families and care families, they have a lot of issues. And in order to allow all those people to express their concerns, to share their problems, we had established regular communication on a monthly basis. And we hope that all that information might be useful for your project. this will allow those families to find solutions to their problems. Also, we expect from your project that you will assist us in digitalization. We are ready to present the novelties in this area, how digitalization would allow to simplify the procedure for adoption of a child. Also, you mentioned about the standards of social services, which will make social services available for foster and care families at the local level. And I think that this will be very useful for those families who need the early intervention service. And one more latest initiatives introduced by our office is support of a child when she finishes the vocational training or school training. This is designed for orphans or children without parental care when they reach the 18 years of age. Actually, this is about the moment when they come out from the educational institutions and have to survive in this world. At this very moment, we have to support children to prevent them from disappointments, to prevent them from drugs, from all sorts of social abuse, etc. etc. Thank you, Elena. Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Perhaps I am not a perfect moderator because I try to listen attentively to all the messages, become fascinated about them, and forget to interrupt you. We have some time left for our event, and thank you, Mr. Brom. Come back to institutions. I'm very grateful to all today's speakers who mentioned about harmful institutional practice. And I would like to give the floor to Olena Chorna and to ask you, during pandemic, the big care institutions, closed care institutions had become even more closed than in usual circumstances. But as far as I know, you carry out monitoring visits to those institutions. Could you please explain recent changes in those institutions? First of all, we cannot hear you properly. Today we have heard that this days, we try to implement a lot of reforms, and all the reforms are aimed at the future. Children are our future. Behind those reforms, we should not forget about children. The situation with reforms about children does not look great, in my opinion. We have to resolve problems at the local levels. This requires reform, educational system reform, decentralization reform. But a combination of all those reforms resulted in rather grave circumstances. At the local communities, at the very beginning, proved unable to offer a lot of services for children. Now, almost 90% of local communities have special structures dedicated to implementation of children's rights. We have here institutions which the auspice of either Ministry of Healthcare or Ministry of Education, etc. Ukraine has been declaring that we want to provide better future to our children. The reforms aiming to prevent care institutions, but the reforms, but the situation does not change for the better. The last year, we looked at the preservation of children's rights and the reason why children are free and the get into the health to the care institutions. Children, I understand, go to the care families, to the care of relatives, that to the care institution, but to a foster or care family. But our analysis from 2017, the beginning of the reform, and figures in 2021 had shown that the number of children in care institutions has not dropped, but vice versa has increased. And this is not on the account of children with severe disabilities. No. The increase in numbers of children is due to the hard life circumstances in their native families. Nobody allows to help to parents, either to employ them or to provide assistance to parents with children with disabilities, because the services at the local level could not be provided. Such children go to big care institutions. They actually gradually lose their ties with their parents, unable to maintain ties with their children, and the end is very sad. We have to analyze our failures. We have to lessons from our failures, and I believe that the project which we're launching today will be able to children from going to care institutions. Thank you, Elena. Thank you for ending with this positive statement. Now the floor will go to Natalia Petrenko, the head of the Shulika community. When we first met with Natalia, my view of the situation was rather great, but my close communication with Natalia and with the vision of a local community allowed me to gain more optimism. All the community became parts of our project. This a result of selection process. All the communities were able to apply for participation in the project. The communities with strong motivation were able to apply. 47 communities applied and 6 communities were selected. That selection was based on the level of motivation inside communities. Natalia, the floor is yours. Good afternoon. I'm a representative of the rural community. The rural communities are actually the grassroots for all Ukrainian talents. Our cooperation with the Children's SOS organization is a long term, and I believe that the services offered by this organization, these are very important new services when we are able to offer services of a mediator, of a special expert, experts who work with the children, experts who may advise how to file documents for the assistance, etc. Actually, this project allowed us to understand how we can bring very important services closer to local people. Now the rural areas become more and more empty. My task is to retain rural residents and to allow our region to retain more people and grow up. Rural areas are full of stereotypes. And when we raise the issues about foster families, about patronages, about carers, etc., we find out how difficult it is to work with people due to the stereotypes. The secrecy about foster families does not promote the solution of the problem. Children who are children who live in foster families should know that they are foster children. You should not keep that in secret. We managed to find 2 families who are ready to take care about children. And quite often people abstain from taking care about foster children because of stereotypes, because nobody provides explanation. What does it mean? People do not know that we are ready to give support to them. People have a lot of misunderstanding about the foster parent role. And about care, big care institutions. When I was a child, I was very energetic girl, and the biggest threat to me on behalf of the adults was a threat that they would send me to a foster care institution. Once I visited the care institution in a village. These were retarded, mentally retarded children. And I saw that children, how they looked like, how they were dressed, how they responded to our performance. I was very much impressed. And I also, when I became a mom, I also frightened my elder son that when he behaved not well, I always threatened to him that I would send him to the children's care institution. And now he's 24. He jokes and threatens to me that he would send me to the pensioners' care institution. I believe that in future we will provide good example for rural communities and provide good practice to rural communities. How good services could be provided to local population. You mentioned about the state in a smartphone. I can assure you that we recently provided the internet services to all our residents. I'm happy with this project, and I hope that this will move our local community forward. Thank you, Natalia. Today, we have representatives from other local communities during this event. This is Alexander Chub, Deputy Head of Tokmakska community, Sergei Sereda from Orikhivska community, both from the Zaporizhia region. Olga Sechova, who is head of the social protection department from Lugansk region, and 2 representatives from the Kiev region, Olena Davidenko from Fastiev, and Tatiana from Uzin. Natalia, thank you for your addition to our discussion, and encourage other local communities to start this work. With this, I would like to give the floor to Sergei Lukashov, National Director of the SOS Children's Cities Ukraine, for staying up to the very end. We would like to you to present your organization. Thank you for this opportunity. I would like to describe why you taken this responsibility upon us to implement this project. I will try to manage myself. Our organization is one of the eldest in the area of delivering support to children without parental care in the world. This is classical thought from Austria after the Second World War. Hermann Meiner, our founder, and German Gmeiner Foundation is being existent even today. Since 1949, we bring foster children to foster families, or provide support to vulnerable families and allow them to raise children with disabilities, etc. We are called SOS Kinderdorf. SOS means responsible community. And we are happy that we will implement this as a synergy and synergy in the network. We exist in 137 countries in the world, and we are quite familiar with the possible failures, mistakes, and best practices. And we base our work at a broad base of international experience. For 70 years, we had proved the majority of our participants, they become very successful. 90% of children from foster and care families they are able to bring up their children. 98% can bring up their children by themselves, and this is a huge percentage because those children who come after care institutions, they quite seldom are able to bring up their own children. 13 million of people get support from our organization. In Ukraine, we provide assistance to vulnerable families, or bring orphans to the foster families, to care families. And this is not the end. The care family or foster family has to be supported, has to be mentored, has to be provided with all sorts of assistance. And they should get attention from society at large and from local community. We can show a good example, a good case from Brovary since 2008. actually 3% of children in Ukraine, they grow up in difficult life circumstances. In 2014, in the period from 2014, almost the entire village, more than children were taken from their parents, and a huge percentage of vulnerable children, they remain in big care institutions. This map shows those 3 regions where we work. In some regions, we have our own social centers, or we have a good partnership with local communities. We have our 5 social centers. These are our partner communities. The social centers provide comprehensive social services to foster families, to native families. We support foster families, and we provide assistance to reintegration of native children to their native families. I am proud that since 2003 we have very positive results. We have covered a lot of families, and 70% of those families in crisis situations, they revived their ability to bring up children. And with proper assistance provided to families, you will be able to restore the family, to allow them to pay taxes and exist in a local community. Big percentage of children who come out from the foster and care families become 90% of them successful. For example, Brovary, 110,000 of population. When we started to work in Brovary in 2008, the big percentage of children went to that care institutions. Now they do not have this care institution. Instead of that institution, they have foster families. They have a lot of support to families with vulnerable children, and this could be scaled over entire Ukraine. That's extremely important, especially in the crisis times which we are surviving today. We should not leave children. We should not sending to care institutions, and we are ready to prove practice together with local communities, with international cooperation. We have some minutes reserved for Q&A session. You're welcome to ask your questions. Please raise your hands and I will give you the mic. Just a moment, we will give you the mic. 1+1, TSN, Svetlana Barzivska. I have a question to the experts. I have a question to Sergey. What is the biggest problem with the big care institutions? Why the number of children in those institutions is growing, and why 3 regions, and what is the reason? What step? The first step is to introduce the expert on the children's problem level. Build something. You need not events. You simply have to provide or to establish a position of an expert who is able to speak to people, to understand their problems in the families, and study these problems and offer assistance. The tools for assistance come. The early development centers, the social apartment for women with children who lost places of residence, who are homeless actually. The ability to go to remote villages and to help people on the ground. The first step is to establish a position of such expert under the local community. And we have to such experts at the level of local communities, social are like inspectors who inspect, while the local people, they need not inspectors, they need assistance, able to provide support. Any further questions? I do not see any further questions. Would you like to summarize the event? Thank you for your attention. Thank you for raising such important issues. We remain connected. I would like to emphasize that during the 40 months of this project, we will try to implement very ambitious objectives. We have selected the most regions. Our project is aimed at vulnerable families and vulnerable children. We have the aspect of legislation project. We have the component aimed at raising public awareness about this. From communicational point of view, care institutions are not the best places to be. Change the point of view. And another aspect is gaining resource support from the local communities. Many communities are not conscientious how many resources do they have, how much responsibility. And now let's start our work. Thank you.